We shall now be joined by Mr. Steve Ng, who is joining us from New Relic. Steve works as a principal developer relations lead for the APAC region, managing a team of engineers and helping them understand the value of observability. When we think of the DevOps space, we see that it has greatly changed the landscape of team and has become an integral tool for improving delivery cycles. But the question is, have we reached the promising land of DevOps? Or is there more to be done? Let's find out in this session by the one and only Mr. Steve NG. Coming to your screens right now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Steve. I'm a developer relations lead here in New Relic Asia. I focus a lot on product advocacy, relationship, and adoption of the New Relic platform. If you're very curious what is New Relic, we are a pure software service offering. We provide observability for all customers and engineers to have end-to-end visibility. Today, my topic is called DevOps, DevOps, or DevOps. Where are we right now? The reason why I wanted to talk about this topic because it actually came out with a conversation that I had with my fellow engineers, my fellow colleagues, where we were talking about DevOps has been around for a really long time, but are we seeing the promised land? Or are you seeing some of the so-called promised benefits that we all wanted to see in DevOps? And in some extreme cases, sometimes you see the opposite effects of DevOps. Hence, today, I'm going to talk about it. So without further ado, let me move forward right here. So as mentioned earlier, are you in the moment right now where you're reaping the benefits of DevOps, what it's supposed to be? Maybe you're actually pushing software much quicker compared to what you did in the past. Maybe you have a better team, collaboration and coordination with your team. Or maybe you kind of went to the other extreme of DevOps, where your delivery is so efficient, so quick, that sometimes it gets straight into production first, then you kind of figure out issues later on. Or the other way, oops, it got what I call extreme continuous deployment. It goes straight to production. Sometimes it happens. We all been through that way. And DevOps, unfortunately, sometimes did cultivate that effect right there. Or maybe you are not a group of people where you think DevOps has been bastardized, has been marketed to the point where it doesn't make sense or just a pure marketing term. And maybe you think that DevOps should have a different meaning. Therefore, it's about DevOps. So today, I'm going to talk about some of the observations, learnings, but also what we see in the industry in the world of DevOps. In any good presentation, I always believe that you should have clear objectives up front why this talk is important and why should you pay attention. First and foremost, I'd like to talk about the promised land of DevOps. Are we there yet? Maybe you're there, maybe you're not. I'll talk about some of the realized benefits and what I've seen people that are getting today, but also I'll talk about some of the challenges that some of the things that we still see in the world of DevOps. Right now, the second part right here is the ecosystem and the market is really mature now that you can actually do DevOps as a service. There's really no need for you to build your own tool because there's literally every provider for every use case right there. Because I say you got a bigger problem, which is like team morale, people, attracting people, and also building the right thing. As I say, you got a bigger problem you need to worry about there. And lastly, just to wrap it up, I'm going to talk about some of the emerging trends that what we see in the world of DevOps. First and foremost, just a quick recap. If you're relatively new, or we just do a quick refresher on the term DevOps, DevOps is actually a movement, a philosophical movement where we want to combine teams so that they can work better together. So the promise of DevOps is better involved with cross-functional teams, better collaborations as dev and operations engineer. They actually see what each other are doing. They collaborate better. They're aware of what they're doing. But also, especially for developers, you upskill yourself and you know what's going on in ops. And likewise, as an ops engineer, you maybe pick up scripting or programming language, or you pretty much just get a better understanding what the developer is doing. By doing so, DevOps promise that we actually release software much quicker in the market, will allow us to experiment much quicker, but most importantly, it allows us to fulfill business requirement much quicker because we're pushing features much quicker right there. I remember when DevOps first came out, predominantly it's because all the big internet companies are doing Facebook, Netflix, Google, and all the innovative startups, they're able to adopt DevOps much quicker because they have a relatively new technology stack relatively small team, but also they're disrupting some incumbent business right there. And therefore, one of the bigger push levers why people are doing DevOps is because the cool kids are doing it. If they're doing it well, it's something that maybe we should pay attention and maybe we should do it right there. Well, back then, when you really think about software development, we have to change, and the industry is ripe for a disruption right there. Traditionally, software has been always delivered by a waterfall model where you have different stages, and by the time when you reach to a specific release, you're probably 6 to 12 months ahead, and probably the requirement and the market has changed. So this is usually what I call a very popular meme that we always seen in the world of DevOps, where once the developer checking code, it's really up to the ops engineer to figure out what's going on. And quite often, a lot of an ops engineer, they're under a lot of stress because they need to make sure everything's working in production. And quite often, production is always on fire there. When DevOps first came out, everyone's debating what is DevOps, what DevOps should and shouldn't be. Again, depending on personal background, maybe experience, or maybe certain point of view, a lot of people have different point of view what DevOps should and shouldn't be. Is it maybe Kanban for ops? Or is it maybe you got to leverage more automation tool like infrastructure as code and maybe using programming as a way to automate much, much more? You want to introduce more automation right there. Is it about that? Or is it about maybe having a very lean, efficient deployment as you've seen with manufacturing, especially in supply chain and manufacturing, DevOps, especially the delivery pipelines such as continuous delivery, continuous deployment, borrows a lot of this philosophies from industrial manufacturing right there. So what's right, what's wrong? And the industry had a lot of debate what should be in the world of DevOps. And I do say with this, and I do say the industry did really well. Not just myself, but pretty much everyone in working in the industry and what I call the DevOps movement did make a change in how we do and develop apps today. We're moving away from waterfall. We're getting closer to agile and lean. And I will say, as an industry, everyone now has a better understanding what DevOps should and shouldn't be. In fact, in the industry, when you do a quick Google search, you can see a lot of frameworks on DevOps right there. So you can see the pretty popular infinite loop where you have continuous feedback, continuous integration, continuous deployment. You got operate monitor on the right-hand side for operations engineer. Then you have develop and plan, especially for developers right there. And from there, the race is on. The race is on. Every service consultancy, every platform that you can figure it out, every vendor out there is actually race is on to actually build every tool chain and offer value add across every stage of the infinity loop that you see in the world of DevOps. And again, we did a really good job. You pretty much can find everything that you can see with this loop right there. In fact, I dare say we probably overcomplicated it. So what you see right here is just a very simple research that a lot of people do in the internet just to map out during the whole DevOps tool chain and the cycle, just how many tools is available to you for you right there. So you can see if you want to improve certain sectors, your biggest problem is which one do I choose and what colors and kind of UI that you actually look for. And probably the better one that I really appreciate is actually by Zebia Labs, where it actually designed and actually created like a landscape what people can actually get from a tooling point of view in the world of DevOps in the form of a periodic table. It just reminds me of the early days when we were doing science class in classroom right there. As mentioned earlier, it's very color coded based on what you want to do, including us New Relic were inside it too. But as you can see, the industry is pretty mature and also partly because us engineers, we love the latest and shiny toys that's available in the market right there. But also, I do want to say, as an industry right now, you can measure DevOps too. I'm not making this up. In fact, probably the most popular one is the DORA DevOps research report, where you can actually download. And there's a lot of publication pretty much every year. The last one that we saw is the 2021, and actually going to release in 2022 relatively soon. And within DevOps, there are benchmarks that you can actually measure yourself to see, are you in so-called the optimal state of DevOps operation right there. So within the DORA metrics, there's four. You have deployment frequency, you have lead time for changes, you have time to restore, and change failure rate. And the good thing about the DORA metrics right here is they have different profiles. You can see and can benchmark yourself. Where do you belong into that particular category? Are you in the low end, the middle end, the high end, or elite? In fact, I would say in this report, sometimes people kind of feel that maybe they're not in the elite stage or maybe in the low stage, or sometimes this report will give you that feel good feeling because maybe you're in the elite stage. But what this report really did is really start, kind of create that benchmark what DevOps should be and identifies areas that you can improve. But also, within this report that's co-sponsored by various people, is the benefits of DevOps is very well articulated right now. In fact, there's a lot of studies, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of return on investment or ROI that literally is just, you'll be very odd or you're seen as an outsider if you don't do DevOps, right? So the choice is obvious right now, especially in this stage. It makes a lot of sense, especially for team, to actually embody and embed DevOps principle. However, there is one problem with all the research and many years of conference events, technology trends, and talks, and including myself, is if you look at the DevOps movement, it's actually a philosophy that really encourage collaboratively on culture point of view within a team. But somehow in the industry, we never really talk about this. We focus on tools, we focus on different things, but we never really talk about the skill set, the collaboration, the team structure, but most importantly, the incentive that people need to be doing right in order to encourage a good DevOps culture. And hence, this is the main purpose of this talk. And that's the problem I want to highlight in this particular track right here. In fact, I dare say DevOps is so good right now. Even sometimes you might see, I call it the extreme continuous deployment, where DevOps is so good, the delivery pipeline is so great that we did a really good job that we can deploy straight to production. In fact, that's a real screenshot that I captured recently. Airbnb, one of the engineers accidentally deployed straight into production with the word test and test dev. And the internet was very kind because a lot of engineers, us, we understand sometimes things happen, and the internet responded with kind right there. So sometimes it happens. So maybe your, as mentioned, your deployment tool chain is so efficient that it goes straight to production, and you become what I call DevOps, not DevOps, DevOps. But the reality is, people don't really talk about is fundamentally developers and operations engineer. They're very two different persona. They're two different way of doing things. In fact, probably my favorite quote of all is actually from Stephen Hines. Again, one of the engineers. They actually talk about developers are from Venus, ops are from Mars. Again, this is a popular term. It's coined and was borrowed from a very popular relationship book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. That book actually talk about the relationship dynamic between men and women. And this is the same thing too, actually, in the world of DevOps. Developers, aka Venus, operations engineer, aka Mars, they both think, act, communicate, but most importantly, incentivize in a very different way. And that's the problem I feel like a lot of people don't talk about. And if you're not really realizing the benefit of DevOps, that's something you need to work on. And I'm going to provide you some suggestion based on personal experience where I see where it works right there. Now, let me give you an example. Change and reliability, they don't mix very well. The reason is because when someone make a change, maybe a new software version or deploy a new feature, something will break. That's the reality of it. If there's no change, there's no breakage. If there's no change, everything is stable. But if there's no change, you're not innovating, you're not delivering features, and you're not changing or maybe delivering what business priorities, what they want, that you need to do right there. So here's an example of Mark Berry, again, a software developer that got a lot of traction with his tweet right there that programmers don't get burned out on hard work. They get burned out of changing wind directions, but also not shipping the software. The software got stagnant. And because you got to understand, software engineers are being incentivized of delivery. On the other hand, if you look at Betsy Bayer, again, one of the co-author of the very popular book, Google SRE, or Site Reliability Engineering, how Google runs production system, where it's being said that a team must allocate this amount of time on resolving tickets and by improving service, scalability, and reliability. Now, I want you to see this to quote. Did you notice the conflicting priorities between dev and ops? And therefore, when people talk about DevOps, how are you going to encourage them to collaborate when their fundamental principle, how they're being incentivized, is so different, right? So again, as mentioned early, as right now, if you try to do DevOps, again, I really doubt tooling is an issue. You have much bigger problem, which is team structure, alignment, and incentives right there. So, okay, great. I talk about problems. So what are we going to do to fix it? So what I want to share with you is some of the suggestions that it worked very well with me when I work with customers, not only with my professional work, but also with engagement with customers. I also use this engagement personally with my wife. So my wife, she's trying to do digital transformation in an accountancy firm, and it's really hard. We all know cultural change or some form of transformation or changing habit is really hard too. This also is applicable in the world of DevOps. Now, why three, not five, not 10? To verify, you probably don't have a lot of time. You probably want to work on a few initiatives that's going to give you the maximum return. That's why I only say you only need three, not five, not 10. So first and foremost, what I suggest is instead of trying to be obsessed, should you build, should you buy, should you get the latest, what tooling you want to use, you got bigger problems. I would say just like Ben Butler Cole, again, another engineer that's got a lot of traction with his quote, you need to develop systems, you need to develop process, not software. Because again, once you have a good process and workflow, everything will fall nicely in place. The second one is what I suggest is, especially for behavior change, you don't really need to get any management consulting school or go to MBA. I suggest that maybe you want to have a read called The Diffusion of Innovation. I'll show you some examples because I've used this personally with customers when they do want to go for a change. I use this too, and I recommend this to my many, many friends. They want to do behavior or cultural change. Again, it's really easy to understand. Once you understand it, it's much easier for you to do that. And the third one, maybe you need a dedicated team to actually fulfill the requirement and what I call the developer experience team. That's where I come into play. So as mentioned in my role, quite often I work with software engineers because sometimes our software engineers might have an issue, or maybe like operation engineers might have an issue working with the team. So quite often I like to joke my unofficial job description. I'm like a personal assistant, both for developers and also like a personal assistant for ops engineer. We want to get both team working together in solving problem. Quite often, I always say tooling is not your problem. It's the underlying problem that you have much bigger problem. Tooling should come last. So let's first start with the first one. Tooling, what particular software? Is it proprietary? Is it New Relic? Is it open source? Tooling is rarely a problem. The reason is because, as mentioned earlier, the industry and the ecosystem is really mature enough where you can literally find a really good tool based on what you need to do. In fact, I dare say the industry right now, they actually can provide DevOps as a service. DevOps as a service, maybe you want to go through a cloud-based service, on-prem or hybrid. That's a lot of options for you. Again, as mentioned, the only probably right now you just need to decide, what colors, maybe the look of the UI, and maybe some pricing options. But again, tooling shouldn't be an issue. If you have a problem with tool, it's not because you have a problem with the tooling, it's you have a problem with your process. And maybe the tooling doesn't fit the process that you have right now. So the first step that I always suggest is forget all tooling and just forget everything for a moment and just ask yourself a really good question. Do you have everything that you need to see in an environment? I dare say probably most of the time you don't. Sometimes because the system is not friendly to monitoring or instrumentation. Sometimes it's just not easy to get the data out to actually visualize it. Sometimes the data is being locked up into some form of proprietary API or software. Just getting that visibility and seeing what's going on, it's really tough. And therefore, if you can't see it, how do you know what you need to optimize and how do you know what you need to build an effective tool chain or delivery pipeline? So the first step is getting visibility. So let me show you one example right here is based on one of the work that I worked with a customer here in Asia, where we want to find out the hardware telemetry that's going underneath it right there. In order to actually streamline deployment of new service, we must first understand what's being generated and what's the potential, what I call errors, or when things goes well, we need to understand the state of that particular machine or our application right there. So first and foremost, you can see right here, I'm using logs as a way of getting data out, and we go through a simplification process. So we go through a discovery process and understanding when you see this, this means that. That's the first step of simplification, because once you understand and see what you do, then you can build efficient process and workflow around it right there. And the holy grail that a lot of people try to achieve is automation. So you can see right there, once it's done automatically, you know where you have the right workflow, then you can start automating and start doing automation and optimizing your delivery pipeline. As mentioned earlier, you don't really need to go and spend millions of dollars or do an MBA for behavior change. My recommendation is just go with this two. You're good already. One is called the Law of Diffusion of Innovation. It's actually, you can find it in YouTube. It's actually by Simon Sinek. He actually talked about the story. How do you encourage cultural and behavior change within an organization? That's actually a fantastic talk. I always recommend that. I also recommend to my friends, work colleagues, customers, and even I'm doing personally myself, helping my wife with digital transformation. And the second one that I suggest that you want to look at is diffusion of innovation, is you want to understand within a team structure, which teams are innovators, early adopters. That's where you introduce shift within the team in order to adopt new habits or new practice that really do good results. Lastly, again, I want to talk about maybe you should consider a developer experience team. So a developer experience team is a special team that's usually come from a software developer or software development team that sits together with the operation team and actually working together, because nothing comes better if developers that build software themselves, they come into the operation team, because most of the time I've seen operation team is the one that going into the developer right there. So I want to bring this example called Riot Games. So during COVID, online gaming is very popular. So Riot Games, again, probably created some of the most popular games on the planet. And what they did is they have a developer experience team where they actually create a set of automated observability and standards in order to improve DevOps practice right there. I want to draw attention right here on the left-hand side. You can see there's a map. Yes, it's literally a map that's available for engineers in order to use the service, what you need to do. I don't know about you, but if I'm an engineer, if I see that map, I'll be very, very happy and incentivized to actually collaborate much better. So thinking right here is, I like to suggest that maybe you need to think about maybe creating a different team structures and maybe, go through what Riot Games is doing right there. Now, what about us? What about here? Here in New Relic, we have a different structure. The structure that we use is actually described in ThoughtWorks. So ThoughtWorks is a very prominent consultancy agency around the world. They talk about different team structures and what you can do in DevOps. So within itself, ThoughtWorks actually talk about some of the best material, and I also recommend this as what team structure is best for DevOps to flourish. That's super important, and I have the link for you. And within ThoughtWorks, they talk about the trunk and the leaf and the hub and spoke. I'll start the later one. The hub and spoke is kind of like a centralized artillery unit that's being managed by command center. Usually a single team that pretty much calling the all shots. Usually that's people who start there. But for us in New Relic, we follow the trunk and the leaf, where we have the main SRE on the main team. And the SRE also embeds themselves what we call SRE champions within the development team to make sure champions are reliability practice and make sure that the DevOps, the delivery pipeline is actually doing okay. So what you write here is, in order to create effective DevOps culture, you need attention, especially a team organization, work practice, and reporting line. But most importantly, and the most important part which people don't talk about in any talks I've noticed, is incentive. Once you get an incentive right for both ops and dev, that's where you have an efficient DevOps culture right there. Just to wrap it up, let's talk about life after DevOps. Okay, I talk about the challenges of DevOps. I talk about what you can do. I'll talk about DevOps as a service. But let's talk about, some of the emerging trends that's actually going on. And I would say, what's new after the life of DevOps? What's coming? And there are 4 trends that I observe, and let me share them with you, and you can decide what's right and what's wrong. First and foremost, what you can see is there's this rising topic on the concept called platform ops. Platform ops is actually a theory of a lot of hypotheses that really came out with the proliferation where everyone just went crazy with DevOps. So instead of trying to focus on DevOps, maybe focus on the practice, standards, and the tooling that you have, and have another separate, what I call governing team that focus on platform ops. So platform ops stands for platform operations. So when you look at any platform's operation theory, you always come across what we call the pizza story. If the pizza is too little or too few to actually accommodate a large team, you need to break up that team. So actually platform ops follow that concept. And it is a way of optimizing DevOps practice and to make sure the platform is consistent for everyone to do it. Now, platform ops is very debatable right now because a lot of engineers are asking, hang on, there's so many ops right now. You have DevSecOps, you have business ops, there's so many ops. Do we really need another ops into the play? So again, it's still debatable. It's not really proven yet, but it's good to know because sometimes you will see maybe the next thing after DevOps is platform ops. The next one is no ops. Ooh, a lot of people love this concept called no ops. Just imagine you don't need operation engineer. Everything would just work well with leveraging the cloud, and developers, especially engineers, just focus on value add activities like developing software. So the principle of no ops actually built on top of using platform as a service and some of the more modern cloud services such as serverless architecture. But the problem is that you got to make sure everything you design has to be secure and highly reliable right there. In fact, there's a popular analogy called cats and cattle, like cats are cute and adorable, like a monolith. Cattle is like a container, where if a container dies, you don't care, just like cattle. But the problem is, this is really good if it's really brand new, your company is born in the cloud, using cloud native architecture, pure microservices, some of the latest framework, and you have really solid design. I think that's only possible. But the reality is most people don't. Very rarely when people do software, people want to really take into consideration like security and reliability into it. So again, still interesting concept, but I think if you have the right condition, it's possible. The next one is DevSecOps, Developer Security Ops. Oh, this is probably one of the biggest buzzword right now. We have to shift left, getting developers to be mindful when they build products. They want to make sure that it is secure, all from the way of development right there. Again, a sneak and a couple of few providers probably come to mind that are very popular. But again, you got to understand DevSecOps is follows the same principle like what you see in DevOps. It will require cultural shift again for some people. If you as a people manager, if you have a lot of problem in changing culture, doing DevSecOps, you're going to have the same problem if you try to implement DevOps. So the big question is, are you good in changing culture? If not, you're going to have a lot of problem in DevSecOps. Lastly, just to wrap it up right here, is SRE with DevOps. So SRE right now is the biggest buzzword, and I would say SRE, where Google open sourced the way how they operate some of the biggest and most advanced services right there. SRE stands for Site Reliability Engineering, where you treat operations as if it's a software problem. You're bringing software principle in the world of operations right there. So far, this resonated the best in the community because what happened with DevOps is DevOps, I think when we first introduced in the industry, it shifted way too left. And especially for system administrators, ops engineers, and infrastructure engineers, they don't feel too comfortable, but they are comfortable with the term of SRE. And the good thing is because it is gaining traction, and even the latest report on DORA, which is the 2022 DORA metrics, they are changing from availability to reliability. So it seems like what's going on in the industry, DevOps is actually following up very closely with SRE or Site Reliability Engineer. With that, let me just summarize right here. As mentioned earlier, if you're paying attention with this presentation, don't worry, I got you covered. You actually can bring out your camera, or you actually can get a copy of this deck. You actually can get all the links that I mentioned earlier. But let me just recap right there. The industry right now in DevOps is quite mature, where you don't really need to buy any tooling. There's a lot of, you don't really need to build your own DevOps because you actually can buy them. And as I mentioned, DevOps as a service, as mentioned, you got bigger problems that you try to solve right there. When you have a successful delivery through your CD or CDI pipeline, it shouldn't be like, oh my God, nothing happened, thank God. It should be because, hey, we did something really interesting. And we should be really happy because we can now unlock additional features and new things we can do. We should change the way how we do things, and not so that you actually can be more happy, and you actually should be doing much better in your environment right there. So as mentioned earlier, I kind of give you some advice where you should streamline your process, your behavior change, and also team augmentation, because when other things come into play like DevSecOps or SRE, they're going to go through the same thing again. So as mentioned, I do want to give you some heads up, what's coming in the industry, but also what is being discussed in the community, such as platform ops, no ops, DevSecOps, and site reliability engineering. With that, thank you so much. My name is Steve. I'm a developer relations lead here at New Relic. I hope you have a good time. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just look for my name and this space. Happy to connect with you if you'd like to connect a bit more. With that, thank you so much.